Hey guys! Quite a few of you have been asking for unspecified dishes that include noodles, and a couple of you have been asking for stir fry, so that's what we're making today. Hope you'll enjoy. If you enjoyed these videos and want to see more, definitely give the video a thumbs up, and if you have any food requests, let me know in the comments. First we're going to be making the wok itself, and for this I started out by taking some scrap clay, then flatten it slightly to create a dome, and then use my blade to slant the sides. You then want to smooth out any harsh edges. You can do this by either rolling it on your work surface, using your hands, or some of your tools. Once you're happy with the shape, you want to bake it, and after baking you want to make a mold. If you have any questions about the tools and materials I use, I do have a video about it which I will link in the info box. I then roll out a thin sheet of black clay using either the second or third thinnest setting on my pasta machine. Add this to the mold, and I used my ball tool and silicone tool to smooth it out. When you're happy with the look, you can pre-bake, and after pre-baking I painted it using silver colored alcohol ink and black acrylic paint. If you watch the videos on my main channel, you know that I love rustic and vintage looking things, so I wanted this to look really well used. And so I applied both the paint and ink, kind of messy, and I also used a needle tool to make some scratches. If you don't have the silver colored alcohol ink, you can use silver colored paint, although I really do recommend getting the ink because it does have a much more metallic finish. Then seal that with a matte glaze to protect the paint. For the handles, I took some of the leftover wire I coated in my last video, which was the heart-shaped bundt cakes. I then simply bent this and hammered the ends to make them flat. I gave them a slight bend and then used some white non-flammable craft glue to glue them onto the wok, just to hold them in place. And I then added Fimo Deco Gel, which is going to make sure they really stick. You can then pre-bake it again, and then you also want to prepare 8 of these little dots. If you want to add them to the wok right away, you can do that, but I'm going to do it later in the video. To make the broccoli, I first took this light green and rolled out some snakes in different thicknesses. I then put these together almost like little trees. Add some small balls of clay on top and then use a needle tool to add some texture. If you happen to be one of the lovely people who read the initial blog post I made when making this channel, I do recommend you to check out the info box again. I made a new blog post just talking a bit more about what's going to be posted on here and how everything is going to work out. There's not exactly going to be a ton of new information, but it could be useful knowledge. And if you haven't read the original blog post and have no idea what I'm talking about, definitely do check out the info box still, because it's just going to give you an idea of what this channel is going to be about, what type of things I'm going to be posting, and what I'm not going to be posting. And after baking, I added some shading using acrylic paint. The brighter green is mostly going to add some color variation, which is going to make it look more realistic, and then the darker green is going to be the more visible shading. Next, I flattened some small balls of a brighter green, then cut off any excess clay to get the little piece in a pot shape. For the texture, I first used a silicone tool just to give it the definition of the piece on the inside, and then I used a needle tool to make a line at the top. Give them a slight curve and bake. After baking, I used the same 2 acrylic paints I used for the broccoli to add some shading. For the carrots, I flattened some orange clay using my blade to get a super thin sheet. And I then simply just cut out some really thin strips. You do want to give these a curve before baking. Also, the oranges that usually come in the packs of clay are most often super bright, so you do want to add some white and some brown, or even just some dough colored or tan clay to dull down the color just a bit. For the baby corn, I took some really pale yellow and added a tiny bit to the tip of a needle tool. I then cut lots of little pieces like this and placed them in rows on the side. You don't necessarily have to go all the way around. I didn't because you're not gonna see both sides. And don't worry, I didn't make a ton of these individually. I did make a mold after baking the first one. And after baking, I mixed an even lighter yellow and used this to add some highlights. Lastly, to add some red to the pot, I added some bell pepper, and for this I used some orangey red and then some translucent mixed with a tiny bit of the same red and some orange. Roll out a thin sheet of the first one and a thicker one of the second color, then roll them out again and cut some small pieces. For the texture on these, you just want to lightly use a toothbrush, then give them a curl and bake. Next, you want to take a light tan or cooked chicken kind of color, take some small pieces and then use a toothbrush and a needle tool for the texture. And when using the toothbrush, I used both the tip and the sides. After baking, I first added a coat of some watered down light brown acrylic paint. And I then added some darker brown to some of the edges. The last component I made were the noodles, and for this I just took a light noodle or pasta type color and then rolled out some really thin snakes. To help everything stick to the wok, I first added some Fimo Deco Gel and I then started placing all the items. Make sure to add a few against the side of the wok just to look more realistic, as if they were stuck while stirring. And in general, try to be kind of spontaneous and random with the placement so it doesn't look too organized. Just to keep everything in place, you want to pre-bake, and then after pre-baking you can add a tiny bit of sauce. I mixed Fimo Deco Gel and soft pastel, applied this with a brush and then baked again. After baking, I glued on those little 8 dots from before. You want to add 4 on the outside and 4 on the inside. Then add some glass glaze and you're done. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and let me know what food requests you have in the comments.